Welcome everyone. Today I am with the lovely Steffy White, who is an international yoga teacher, and she's the founder of White Light Yoga, and she's a Lululemon ambassador. Thank you for being here today, Steffy. Really happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yay. So you've been such a big hit on the London yoga scene for a number of years now. Can you tell us how you navigated those early days as a yoga teacher in London and to gain such popularity in such a short space of time?
Well, yeah, it's been quite a journey and feels like such a in a way quite a long time ago that I was doing all that. But yeah, when I first came back from my first teacher training in India, the way that I navigated it was I literally just dived straight in. And I very much knew that I wanted to set up my own thing from the start, but obviously I didn't have any experience. I hadn't kind of honed my craft, very just new, obviously, didn't know much, but I had so much drive and actually a lot of focus. So I had those things going for me, but obviously didn't really know how the hell to teach. Do we ever? I don't know, but certainly not then. But I knew I wanted to set up my own thing, and I knew I got some good piece of advice from someone who I really respected in the early days, and he said to me, once you've literally just done this training, don't go and audition at the places you want to teach right now. He was like, squirrel away, don't let anyone really see what you're doing out there, because you're going to be shit. I'm joking, but like you're going to be rusty as hell. You don't really know what you're doing. You're learning the room and the space and the energy and what's going on. So he said to me, like, just go and practice with your friends and like organize your own things that people are more relaxed about, and they're not going to like judge you, because we all know that some of London's spaces are a bit like that. And so I just came back to London and started renting out little spaces. The first space that I rented was for 6 people, and it was Clinic in Liverpool Street. And I think I'd pay like £20 to hire it. And I would charge all my friends £5. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So I made £10. So basically that was kind of like how I would start. I would just rent out these places a few times a week. I was working full-time in other jobs, and after work I'd go and teach these classes. And then this was kind of before the Instagram boom, and on Facebook I would just tag all my friends. I would take a picture. Again, now it's a bit like, oh, like, would I do that now? Would I take pictures in Shavasana? Would I take pictures of people practicing headstand? Me now, maybe not personally, but back then, yes, definitely. And so then I would tag them all on Facebook and be like, thanks so much for coming. And so much so that some of my friends, they weren't like best friends, but acquaintances who would start coming, and friends of friends would start coming. They would like DM me on Facebook and be like, please stop tagging me in these photos. I don't want to come to your yoga class. And what's quite funny now is that like 9 years on, they're like, Steph, can I come to your class? I want to come to your retreat. And I'm like, I remember the day when you were like, stop tagging me. But that's just a bit silly. So yeah, for me, it was like dive in, hire really cheap spaces. I'm not looking to do this for money right now. I'm safe and secure in my job. I can pay my rent through my job. And this is just about getting good at my craft. What's my vibe? Like, can I get feedback from my friends? What does it feel like to completely forget what the hell I'm doing with people? What's it feel like to start adjusting and being with people's bodies, and what comes up, and maybe when people don't like your class, and or they've never done yoga before, and then you've got the teacher, all these kind of things. I knew I wanted to start to explore, in a way, what a control freak on my terms, in my safe space, rather than, oh, like so and so says she's rubbish. No one was going to do that. It was like in my safe space, which is interesting. I don't know what that says about me, but that's really how I started.
I love that. And you've touched on such few things there for like newbie yoga teachers of you have to really do the work, right? If you want to just get yourself out there and like be committed to it. But also, if you have a full-time job right now, you can do this on the side and you can have an easy transition. Like you don't need to just, pack in your day job and like try and make this work. There does need to be some transition. But also I love the fact that you were creating your own space to well, you kind of said it as in a sense of you didn't have to, you weren't going to be judged, but also I think it was a really beautiful thing to do because it allowed you to be you. Like it wasn't like you had to perform to the studio's kind of vibe and branding and everything. You allowed yourself to be authentic and to be you. And so I think that really for you, Steffi, and obviously I was in London at the same time and I could see it, that was really what was building your community, is like you were showing up as you. People were pulled to that and attracted to that, and you really built up a big community in London and internationally. What do you think has been the main kind of driver for that, and how you've been able to grow that engaged community who are literally waiting for you to drop the next offering?
Well, I would say the number one thing, as corny as it sounds, is authenticity. Like I have never, ever, ever tried to be something else. I am as Scottish as they come. I remember the first, like my exam, the first ever exam that I taught with like a mentor of the school that I trained with. She was like, if you ever swore in a class, the studio would chuck you out and it's so bad. And I understand now as well, would I swear in a class? But back then I swore in my class because I swore. And things like that, I've just always been very much me. And I think also for me, it was organic and authentic to be vulnerable. So I kind of don't mind having a cry with my community, and I've been very lucky to lead lots of very deep retreats and healing experiences with people. And it's not me and them, it's us. And I'm not a polished, healed, enlightened person. I'm very much walking through life with everyone else. And what I think makes my classes hopefully interesting and you get a lot from them is that I use what I'm learning through my life as inspiration in my classes. So that will come through, not like, oh, I'm Steffi and I'm going through this, but it's inspired because I'm growing and I'm in a place of expansion. So that then influences my classes and how I share. So I think that vulnerability with authenticity makes people want to be in your class because we're all mirrors for one another. And if you are in that space, then people are able to, be there in their space, and also to be gentle with themselves because they can see, I don't know, I think it's something to do with that authenticity, vulnerability. And I think I'm a lot of fun. And I think that maybe that's a good mix of like, my classes are spiritual and they're deep and they're soulful, but like, I'm also a complete nut job. So I think people quite liked that, that to be able to go on a retreat with someone and have proper lols and be silly. And we're doing whatever the hell we want to do, dancing all night, but you can be in the circle and it's completely profound and life-changing. But that that's not particularly rare. You do these kind of work, plenty of people do, but I think that's why that my work is popular, or why it attracts people, because of these things. But who knows, maybe also a lot to do with timing. I mentor a lot of yoga teachers, and I do think as well, I think, as you said, you have to work really hard. You have to have vision and focus, and like what is it that you're doing it for? Why do you share? Why do you teach? And work hard to get that clear and then to go out there and share it. But I definitely was I worked a lot in studios after the stories I told you about me hiding places. Then I started to get into studios, and then I was like doing lots of events. And at that time, when I was getting to do all of these things and I was creating my events, was when Instagram yoga was really having its moment, but it was just kicking off. This is like, I mean, it wasn't, but like in my little London world, it felt like it was just kicking off like 8 years ago. And I was just kind of at that moment in London where maybe we were seeing lots of American influencers in yoga, but there wasn't really London people like, oh, I go to her class kind of thing. And with big followings. And I feel like when people speak about luck, that was my bit of like lucky timing in that bit that I was teaching a lot in London, really being out there. And then I would say at the end of my class, I'm Steffy White, follow me on Instagram. Now, if you did that, it doesn't really land the same. People don't really want to follow. I don't know, Instagram, I feel personally, and this might not be what you feel, but I certainly feel like it's had its day in the way that we can share and interact on there. A lot of us are ghosts. Even me, I often see lots of wonderful things. And I'm like, Stephanie, like it. Like, you know what I mean? Lots of us were kind of ghosts. We're not interacting. That really interactive, inspiring moment, I don't know if it's past, but it's certainly changed. And I feel like that was just really good timing, because then that's when like all the brands and stuff like that, and then that's when things go to another level. But when I speak to my mentoring group, I always say this: it's your first people who are your people. And it doesn't matter, like, if Nike sign me to be yoga girl, the people that come from Nike Yoga Girl aren't going to be the people that are there. They aren't. Maybe they will be, who knows, but they probably aren't. It's the people that have come to my classes in London 8-9 years ago. And it's the people that have been coming to my retreats and who've been interacting with my Instagram all this time. They're your people. And yeah, great. Sometimes, you get a share and you get this 2,000 more people. Wow, that's brilliant. And maybe 2 of them will come on your retreats. But it's the people that you're doing the work with and that are really coming to your events and your classes, or they're coming online, maybe they're based in Australia. That's what I have found. So it doesn't matter if you've got 50 people or 50,000, really, because it's that first 50, really.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. And obviously we saw the impact of that last week. We had our day down on Instagram and Facebook were down, and it's like, well, how do you actually connect with your people? And it's a great tool and it's great to be there, but you're totally right. Being able to interact with the people that come to your classes and being a bit grassroots about it actually is super important. But yeah, no, I going back to what you were saying about like the authenticity and you being vulnerable, I totally agree with you. That is really powerful. And a lot of teachers struggle with that. What would be your advice to those teachers that are struggling to kind of show up and be vulnerable and like to share more about their story?
I think personally, I don't have all the answers for these things, but just from where I'm sitting, I wouldn't push it. Like, it's got to happen kind of organically and authentically. And you know what? There is wonderful yoga teachers out there that don't go there. A lot of the teachers, okay, I love classes like that where you can feel that the class starts, maybe I love Jivamukti. So we start with chanting, then they will tell you the focus of the month, and they're such beautiful teachers that they'll weave it into something they learned that week and that they were going through and bring it together maybe with a sutra. And it's like, wow, I'm so inspired. I learned loads. But in the same way, I absolutely love going to an Ashtanga class. And at the end of the class, I'm rinsed through, I'm light, I'm conscious, and I'm ready to see the day in a new way. And that Ashtanga teacher more than likely has not told me anything about themselves, and that's absolutely, they don't need to do that. So I know maybe I've just like kind of come back on when you said, but what makes your classes popular? But why I'm trying to say this is I think it's the key ingredient is absolutely different for everyone, just because that's why people are drawn to my class. If that's not you, it will never work. Yeah. So I think it's like you absolutely can teach successful yoga classes and be a wonderful yoga teacher and no one ever have a clue anything about you.
So it's about being authentic then, isn't
Just
it?
about being authentic and not pushing something, you know, like sometimes when you go to a class and someone's saying a quote and your body's like, ugh, because you know that they know that they're just like, I should put a quote in and you, oh, and we've all been there and I've done it and we've all done it, but that's because it's a pre-thought out planned thing that's not really organic and you're not really believing in it and none of us are really believing in it. So that, like, no, don't do that.
Yeah. So you've run a lot of events and retreats, and you know it's been a really big part of your business. What would you say, like when obviously you've had all of the retreats and events that you've done, and then you've moved, then we've had the pandemic. Like, how have you been able to bring that kind of strong sense of community to your online events?
So when we first went into lockdown, it was really interesting because in December 2019, I'd obviously had a psychic like moment where I must have known what was happening because I had spent the previous 7 years doing 10 to 12 abroad retreats a year. And I booked them in advance, like a year and 2 years in advance. It's all booked up, you know, like my whole year is planned week after week after week of traveling. And I got married in 2019. And on my honeymoon, I was like, well, I'm not going to do a retreat next year. Like, I cannot do a retreat next year. I am exhausted from traveling. I was like, I'll do Sri Lanka in January 2020. And then I'm going to be at home. I'm just going to be in London and see what that feels like. So then I was like, but wait, how will I make any money? That's a big part of my business. I know I'm going to do like an online shala and I need to like pre-record all these classes. I'll do them beautiful. We'll like make Instagram promos. It'll all be gorgeous. They'll all be different themes. Maybe we'll even do a training online. So I spent the whole of December 2019 recording everything. I paid for this amazing website designer, really invested quite a lot, got everything up there, launched it on the 1st of January 2020 and went and did my retreat in Sri Lanka, came back in February with this horrendous cough and was like, God, I'm like really coughing a lot, can't stop coughing through the night. Then obviously I had coronavirus, went into lockdown, and literally March 2020, I think the bundles that I was selling was something like 200 a day. It was absolutely bonkers, like for a whole month. And yeah, so I didn't really have to do any kind of big change because I'd planned all, I didn't have retreats to reorganize or events. So that was all set up. But even though I'd set all of that up, obviously I didn't know that I wasn't going to have like work to do or anything like that. So I immediately started doing Instagram lives for the community. So I started teaching immediately, like a few times a week, Instagram live, and had the big conversation with my community, which I speak to the people I mentor a lot about money. I was like, I'm not going to put a price on this because I'm figuring out this moment and it's Instagram live and I want to offer you something, but in no means am I offering you this as a free class. This is an energetic exchange. I'm always very clear about that. You can donate £1 and that's gratefully received, but it's not a free class. So then I started having, like, in the start of the pandemic, like 500-600 people in my class, with most people, because I had this honest discussion with them and they were kind of getting it. A lot of people actually did start emailing me in the beginning being like, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. I can't believe you're not offering your yoga for free. And I'd be like, we're in a global pandemic. I have no work and this is my work. And I've trained for hundreds, maybe thousands of hours and thousands of pounds and thousands of fucking air miles, excuse my language. And yes, exactly. That's why I need to be paid for this. This has never been needed more, this yoga class by you. So I expect to be paid. So I had very frank conversations with everyone. And it was amazing because I'd have like, 500 people paying about 10 quid for the class, donating straight to my PayPal. So that was wonderful. And then obviously there was people paying £1 and of course there's the people who didn't pay much, but didn't pay it at all. But, whatever. And so I was doing that on Instagram. And then I think I started to get a bit like, I can't keep this up forever. I need to get this like back to my platform. You know, we're speaking about when Instagram goes down and everything and relying on that way. So that's when, you know, I downloaded the Zoom, got my Zoom classes up. But the big thing for me when you were speaking about events was just like wording and branding and what is it that I'm putting out there and how do I make it feel different to my 1 hour classes. So I started doing fortnightly immersions. So it would be 2 hours Saturday morning, 2 hours Sunday morning. I actually started it on Mondays and Tuesdays because I wanted like yoga teachers and free, you know, more people who weren't in office hours, you know, to come along. And so I would package things just with different names and different themes. We had the immersions, we had like full moon things, and just really offering a beautiful range of events, and then staying really interactive on my Instagram. So I think I did like weekly live meditations and, you know, all that sort of thing. And in the pandemic, I think that, yeah, my Instagram, like, what's it called? You know, when they're interacting with you really went up because the engagement much more, because before that, yeah, I wasn't really going on there live and offering things. And then you realize what a powerful tool that is. I just did that this morning, actually, because I've got, it wasn't as manipulated as this, but afterwards I was like, oh, that was really clever, Stephanie. This often happens with me quite organically. Like, I don't, you know, when you asked me to do this, I was like, God, it's so embarrassing because I'm not actually strategic. I've never done a planned Instagram post. I've never thought what I'm going to put out there. When I do retreats and stuff, like I never think about what's going to sell. And you're probably sitting there going, oh my God, that's terrible. But I never, ever think like that. But today I went online and did a morning meditation because I haven't been live for a bit. And then I was like, oh, this is great because I'm launching this new course next week and my newsletter is coming out with my day retreat today. And then of course I look at the sales, and my sales this morning are through the roof just for being online and sharing something with people. So you forget how powerful these tools can be when you use them not in desperation, like, oh, I need to, but just like organically, and because you want to do it for your community.
I think you are strategic because you're coming from a place of purpose. And I think when you are really aligned with what you're doing, you have a vision, like it naturally comes to you what you're supposed to be doing. And it doesn't feel forced. It feels natural, right?
Yeah.
So what challenges have you had with this, with being online?
The challenges are, well, I actually employed an assistant from January. So that's been great in terms of like technical stuff, because I'm not bad at it. I just don't love sitting at the computer all day. But I mean, I've got this far on my own, so I don't really find that sort of thing challenging. To be honest with you, the only challenge really when it comes to work through the pandemic is just like, I just love traveling and I love doing retreats. It's been really good for me to have like almost 2 years off really now from traveling. But it's really made me realize like being away with people and creating these incredible transformational experience for people is what I'm about, and being close to people and touching people and like sitting around breakfast and sharing really alternative thoughts and ideas and practices, and you know, seeing people be like, what? I'm like, yeah, like that is what I love. And I have that in my online community, but it's not being with people in the sweat and that's what I want. And also just love what travel does for the soul and for the spirit, and really miss being in tropical places and sunny places and being in the sea. So the challenge has just been like, fuck, I'm in my living room again, you know? And but it's still beautiful. Like this morning, getting on and connecting with all those people, it makes me feel amazing. I love it. It's very fulfilling. And I know that right now, everyone needs what we're doing more than ever. One of my really good, beautiful friends who's an incredible breath practitioner, she was like, Stephanie, people need what you do more than ever. And so just because it's in a different way, to really remember that and to keep honing in on it and keep sharing it. Because sometimes like all of you guys will feel when we're literally going on Zoom and online. And sometimes you just think, fuck, it's like, this, you know, but it's really helpful for people. So I think I'll always keep this side of the business for sure. But just like, I know that I want to be in community like this, and to nourish and nurture that more than I ever have in my life. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I totally feel you on that. Like, community aspect has been quite a challenging part, I think, that a lot of teachers have found over the last year or so when they've taken their classes online, and trying to weave that kind of real sense of closeness, you know, that you would have had when you were in the class or on retreat.
And the energy is different. There's no getting around it. Like, the feedback in my classes, people, you know, they get so much from it, but I'm like, but have you been to my like in-person class? Because like, how can it be the same? But we just need to remember it's what they need right now. And also, like, you know, when you're working 9 to 5, people now, I think the way that they practice has changed a lot. What's the point in traveling half an hour to get to the studio, to then be sweaty, to get changed, to when they can literally roll out their mat before work? I think that will have probably changed for a lot of people for a long time.
Definitely, yeah. Just as the way people are just working nowadays. So, like, you know, working from home is going to be more acceptable now for a lot of companies, you know. And I think you're totally right. It changes behavior, and people do need this more than ever right now. So, being a yoga teacher, you know, having got your classes online over the last year, you're actually ahead of the game. Like, just to keep going and to know that these platforms are going to get even better. You know, they're going to become more powerful and allow us to have that closer connection that we're all really craving. So I want to talk a little bit more about your community. And I know you launched your online course, which is called Rise. But before we talk about that, I'd really love to understand how you've gone about learning more about your community and your students, like who you're teaching and who they are and what they need from you, so that you can really like speak their language and create the offerings that they really want.
Yeah, good question. I don't know if I'm going to have a good answer for you. So again, I've not done any like analysis or anything like that business wise. Like, I just don't, I know, probably terrible, missing a beat here, but I just don't go into any of that sort of stuff. I do have an agent who I work with for any like brand things. And for that, on Instagram, we look at the analysis and all that sort of thing, but not really. Yeah. What I do know is I do know from here who my community are. And from the very first retreat I did, I remember being like, holy cow, how can I ask people to pay this amount of money? And I wasn't even really probably making much profit. It was my very first one. You're trying to figure out, like, how can I put out to all these people that maybe I've never even met before, like they're going to spend like £1,000, you know, and I was probably just, you know, making a nice little amount for that week. Made it as cheap as I possibly could for how beautiful it was. And I remember really being like, well, at worst case scenario, it's too expensive, no one can come. And that was the first feel of like, I know that isn't really the immediate question you asked, but like things like that matter. Like what there's no point in putting a retreat out there that's going to be £2,000 if everyone that's coming to your class is 21 and at uni. You ain't going to sell a place. But what I found in that kind of way is that my community is like really, I'd say from about 28 to like more into 50s. On my retreats, we have, I would say most people are in their 40s. I've got like, but then also a lot of younger people follow me. So I don't know how to answer your question. What I do know is that whenever I put anything out there and I think, eek, is this quite landing right? And I just sit with it and I think, no, that is what it is worth. And that's how much I've put in it, believe in it, it goes. And then that gives me the confidence. And I say, I know who my community is. You're maybe asking in more of a spiritual way, like, who's your community? And I'm talking about money.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think it's a really important point is that the price point, right? That
Yeah.
you can price your things. But I'm thinking more about like what might be some of the life experiences that, you know, your community are going through, your students.
Huge. It's so vast. Like, you know, I remember one retreat I did in Bali. There was like probably a 21-year-old and a 75-year-old. She was 75 and she came on my Bali retreat on an adventure retreat, half the time in Gili Meno, half the time in Bali. So, you know, miscarriage, cancer patients, divorcees, people coming and realizing they don't want to be with their partner anymore. I mean, just everything, life. People who like have just left their job, people going back to uni. What I'd say is the red thread is that when it comes to retreats, it's like people ready for a gear shift, or who need time to process, or are looking for some answers. So there's a red thread, as in, like, it doesn't always have to be really, you know, sad things, but it's I'd say my community are people who, it's not yoga fitness. It's my community are people who are on a healing journey that is got lots of joy in it, but it's also had depths of heartache. And that's my community. Yeah, that's the answer you were looking for, not the money one.
Babes, that's it. You got it. Exactly. And I'm just looking at a little snippet from your website around your online course. And that's really, this question leads into this next one, which is your course is called Rise, and it's a 6-week journey of reconnecting to the deepest part of yourself, cultivating sacred practice and daily ritual to awaken the power of who you truly are and honor your life as sacred. And I guess that relates totally to what you've just been saying, that, you know, that thread of like people who are going through some kind of life transition, they're having some kind of, not a big awakening, but they are waking up to something that maybe needs changing, and to really kind of reconnect to themselves. So I love that, because obviously the messaging that you put out there is so important to draw the right people in. So I want you to share a little bit more about your kind of course creation process, like what went into deciding what went into your course, what went into Rise, and what you really wanted to share with people.
So Rise, I actually created when I was going through my first round of IVF in April this year. And I had not planned at all to do anything like this. And I was obviously in huge process and learning so much about myself and the strengths within myself and resilience. And probably also learning about heartache in a way that I'd never really experienced. And so I just knew I had to get it out. And I just literally just started recording. and being like, well, what can this time that I'm going through, how can I put these into practices? How can I create practical things for people to work through? And what's helping me right now? And how can I speak about difficulty in an inspirational way that's not personal to what I'm going about, where it's nothing to do with IVF, you know, but it's something that people can take home with them that resonates with their life. So I just started recording. I put it into 6 weeks. I planned out, obviously, the 6 weeks, as in like, what are the themes for every week and what is the goal at the end of the week. And then started to get a structure of like what's included. So obviously there'll be videos, there'll be audios, there'll be maybe a song, like literally like that. And then just sit down, and nothing was planned, rehearsed, or take two. It's just take one, go.
But coming from the heart, again, it's all coming from the heart, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's coming from you being you, like really just showing up as you and sharing what you are going through, like sharing your process. And I think, you know, when you're creating something like that, like an online course, or even when you're thinking about your community, quite often, like they're at point A where you once were, and you're helping to guide them to point B, which is that, you know, happier, more relaxed place, or whatever it is, you know. So taking them on that journey is super important. And I love how you've created that in your program. Like, how did you go about launching it?
So what I did was if you sign up within the next week, 7 days, I'm quite quick. I don't let anything go too long. Like anything I put out there, I'm like, oh, it starts in 2 weeks or 4 weeks maximum.
Yeah.
Not in the way I work, I don't let things, you know, there's no early bird for very long. So I think I said, you know, sign up within the next 7 days and you'll get, I think it was 25 or 35 pounds off, something like that. Again, I just literally plucked that out of thin air, so excuse me, just felt good, like I liked the number. And so then, yeah, everyone obviously needs to sign up in that week. And so then everyone signs up. And also the reason why people signed up, because that's a course that lives on my website that anyone can buy at any time and do for as long as they want. It's not like, you know, it doesn't have start dates. It just lives, it lives on my website. But I knew I wanted to get a huge amount of people to sign up in that week. So I did the price off, and we're going to do a once off live launch class session with Steph. Okay. So then in 7 days time, it was like a big live launch where I did like an opening thing, but then I recorded that. So anyone who buys it from there gets that. But lots of people like the live interaction. So that was another thing. And also if you signed up then within that week, then you'd be on the Facebook community who were all doing it at the same time, rather than trying to like connect with people who'd already done it. So there was those reasons. And then, yeah, I think in the first week we had 150 people. And then now obviously people go on my website and they just continue to do it.
I just really feel like this conversation has been so much about like intuition, trust, coming from the heart, coming from a place of purpose, and just really like trusting and believing in what you do, you know, and serving, like not coming from like, oh, a salesy place, but really just showing up for your community and serving them.
And when you do that, it's magnetic. There's no stopping people getting involved. The few times where I felt like, we've all been there, you know, when you create something out of desperation, maybe you're like, fuck, I haven't done anything in ages, or fuck, I need to earn some money. You know, when it comes from those places, as much as it's natural to have those moments, like try and step back and come from it at a different way, because it never is going to be attractive.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you just come with a different energy, I think, and people feel that. Finally, then, what advice would you have for any teachers who they've been teaching on Zoom, you know, they forced themselves online last year and they've been doing their Zoom classes, and maybe they've found the numbers are dwindling perhaps? What do you think they need to be doing online, or what advice would you have for them to actually create other offerings, you know, other online offerings? Maybe it could be online workshops or online retreats or online courses.
Well, firstly, I think like you should congratulate yourself, because when you signed up to be a yoga teacher, you didn't really think you were going to be like a presenter or like a technician, or I mean, this is totally bonkers.
Okay.
Yeah, I think really give yourself a massive pat on the back, because it is daunting to have these conversations. Now we're getting a bit more used to it, obviously, but it is hard to show up and be seen on a camera. You don't know how they're feeling on the other side. So well done. It's not easy at all. And the advice for more offerings online is, I guess, start with like, what do you want to do? Ask yourself, what would be cool? Like, what do you think is cool? Or when you see people putting things out there, like, what is it about what they're doing that excites you? And if you were a punter, what the hell would you want to do? And then just make it happen. The great thing about being online is there's a massive opportunity for saving money. Like, we don't have to hire the event space. You don't have to, you know, that for me was massive costs. And also what's wonderful is that you don't have to half your pay with a yoga studio. Everything can come straight to you. So there's so much opportunity. You just need to be creative. Ask yourself what you want to do, online? How do you think outside the box? Renaming things instead of classes, like I said, you know, immersions, retreats. How can you just slightly shift what you're doing? You don't, you know, a lot of what I do is very similar because I'm just me, but there's just slight shifts, and you just mold it slightly different, and it continues to evolve. And then your offerings feel really quite different. But it's not like, you know, every week I have to think, oh my God, I need to start from scratch. You know, the foundations are always there. It's just little tweaks. And finally, another piece would be, with your social media and stuff, rather than, and you know, I've got to still learn this too, finding that balance between, like, when you're putting something out there, whether it's just a picture, a post, some writing, like, the more that you can show up and be in service, like you're saying, like really giving something back, that's when your social media is going to be of value, instead of being like, that's an amazing yoga pose. We've been there. Sometimes I'll still like to do it. It's okay. And sometimes it's great. But more than not, what you're putting out there has to give something back, you know?
Yeah.
I think. And I don't do it enough either, but I think that's when your platforms become really powerful and exciting. You know, sorry to go on, but like, one example is this woman. She's a florist. What is her name? Oh, I'll need to think. Anyway, I follow her on Instagram. She's amazing. I started following her in lockdown. She had maybe like 30,000 followers. Went on yesterday because she just came up, and now she's got like 200,000 followers. And she's just this mum. And every single one of her shares is on a Sunday. She goes into her studio and she's like, today I'm going to do these flowers. And she shows you how to do them. And they're all different flowers. And she makes an arrangement. And the reason why her Instagram is going through the roof is because I go on her Instagram and I learn something. And I can take it away, and I'm like, I love that. And I sit there and I watch her whole video, and I'm like, oh my God, that arrangement is amazing. I've just learned something. I'm going to go and try and do it myself. And I feel like, you know, instead, how do you do that in a yoga way where it's not like, here's your headstand, 3, 2, 1. That's okay too. But maybe there's a more creative way. You could sit down and maybe tell a story from the Bhagavad Gita. Maybe you tell a story, you know, like, I don't know. There's many creative ways. But I think that's the way Instagram's changing. Your Instagram will be a powerful tool if people can go on there and they start to learn something, and they're interactive, and they're wow, instead of like, oh, she's so flexible.
Yeah, totally. And using the video function there. I mean, it's a video tool essentially. So just using that rather than thinking of just posting something, actually using like stories, IGTV, and on all of the video functions there as well. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. You're an absolute star. Tell us how we can practice with you, Steffi.
You can practice with me if you head to my website, steffywhiteyoga.com. There's online bundles there, and just keep in touch with my Instagram. Thank you, love.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're a legend. Thanks, Steffi.